blah, blah. Welcome back, everyone. Another episode of True Crime Junks. I'm Sir Wessington, and with me, as always, the Hollis McGee.
Countess Holly McGee.
Countess Holly McGee. Damn,
I would be a countess.
That'd be sweet.
That would be sweet, right?
How do you become a count?
I don't know. Probably marry a counter.
What a knee slapper. And today we have a story to really pop off Women's History Month because we're covering the first female serial killer, or at least the first female serial killer to be convicted.
Yes.
And that is the Damsel of Death, Aileen Wuornos.
Yeah.
Now, this story is a very tough one to get through because similar to Mary Bell, it's a story of a woman who was born in just the shittiest of the shitstorm.
Yeah.
And goes, like, the way that she has to live her life puts her in situations that are just very difficult, and it's a tough story to talk about, and it's a tough topic to cover because there is so much. It's all going to be dark, gloomy, and negative. There's not much that's going to be like interesting that isn't depressing.
Yeah, it's a rough one for sure. She got the short end of the stick being born into what she was born into.
Yes, I mean and we'll get into that, and I definitely think, there's some people who debate this lady pretty heavily because, and I'll be honest with you guys, I have not formulated a full opinion on where I stand with it.
Yeah.
But a lot of her murders she claims in self-defense, and some of it you could understand if she's telling the truth. But the problem is with her rap sheet and her history,
it's kind of like hard. It's a tough cookie to crack.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love her. I love that how Cardi B got her knack for drugging and stealing from men, kind of from the OG lady.
True.
Miss Wuornos right here.
It's true. That's kind of her rap sheet. That's kind of her.
Yeah.
Her whole thing is that she was, without giving too much away of what we'll talk about, but she was working in prostitution, and to make sure that she could live with her girlfriend at the time.
Yeah.
And it put her in some situations where she ended up murdering some of her
victim,
her clients.
Oh yeah, I guess
potential clients. And that's kind of where we'll build it up, and we'll get to that point.
The joke will make sense in a minute.
Yeah, it's pretty. It's a fascinating subject.
It's an interesting. I really wanted to do her mostly because I'm pretty positive she's like she's the first female to get convicted serial killer. I know she's not the first female serial killer in America.
Right.
But because the thing is also too, I have this weird belief that I'm like, I don't believe anybody's a first because I believe that other people did it before and never got caught.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, there's claimed to be like almost 2,000 serial killers in America right now that we just don't know about. There's definitely been multitudes of female serial killers. Yeah,
and I think that the reason why she gets labeled as the first one is it's the only one that's been fully convicted and has a rap sheet of multiple killings. Because there's a lady, and don't quote me on this, but didn't she kill her husband and then froze him, his body, but then tried to kill multiple other people? And that happened before this lady, but they didn't technically convict her. I mean, it's one of those gray lines, but... Yeah,
wasn't there also a recent story? I don't know why this came to my head, because when you said put it in the freezers, I remember this one story of this woman who died, this old lady that died, and then they found her husband in the freezer.
Yeah,
because he died previously. It was interesting.
It's
a weird one. But anyways, so, Aileen Wuornos.
Yeah, she has an interesting name. If you say it how it's spelled, it should be Aileen, but in all the interviews we found, she goes by just Aileen.
Yeah, and kind of just also goes by Lee.
Yeah.
So Aileen was born in Rochester, Michigan, to her mom, who was 14, and her dad, who was 16. But that's when they had their brother, so they were a little 2, and then 2 years later had Aileen.
Yeah, so Aileen 18 and a 16-year-old.
Yeah, no wait, it's a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old. And then, 16 and an 18-year-old
when
she was born. But by the time she was born, her mother already filed for divorce, and she's never met her father because her father was convicted of, because he was incarcerated at her time of her birth because he was charged with kidnapping and sodomizing, I think, a 7-year-old.
Yeah.
It was something bad.
Some heavy charges.
Yeah. And then he killed himself in prison. He was also diagnosed with schizophrenia, which also I'm wondering if maybe a little bit of Aileen, that could be talked about later. But yeah, so he then committed suicide by hanging himself in the prison. And then, so basically, and then also about the time that Aileen was 4, all this already happened, so she never met her father. She has an older brother, and then her mom basically fucks off and drops off her brother and her to her grandparents, who were not the best people either.
No.
So basically, Diane, her mom, left them with the grandparents, who were both alcoholics. Then they legally adopted the brother or her brothers Keith and Lean. In 1960, I didn't say her birthday. It's February 29th, 1956. Pretty sure she's a Pisces. So then basically they adopt the kids, but by age 11, Lean was already basically selling her body for drugs, food, cigarettes, but basically was having sex with other kids in her class to buy herself other things. It also said, also known that she had sex with her brother.
Mm.
Allegedly, she said that also then her grandfather sexually assaulted her multiple times and would brutally beat both of the children. And, but basically before little graphic of everything that happened, basically because the grandfather had sexually assaulted Lean, and she actually became pregnant at 14.
Mm-hmm.
By her grandfather,
right?
And so that was not the best, but basically then she was shipped off to the home for unwed mothers. A lot of people are at that time about 97, or was it? No, 71. And then the child was placed for adoption, which I'm always that bitch that's I wonder what the kid thinks about all this.
Right.
Because I'm just curious. And then soon after that, Aileen dropped out of school. Then her grandma died. And then about the time she was 15, her grandfather kicked her out of the house. And then she was living on the streets. And then basically from there, she just became a prostitute.
Mm-hmm.
And so, let's see if there's anything else I don't really know if there's anything else besides her childhood. That's why I see a lot of similarities with Mary Bell. But also in the sense of instead of her grandparents making her a prostitute, she became a prostitute to feed herself, because she was buying cigarettes and also the kids are so mean. They all they gave her the nickname Cigarette Pig.
Yeah. Because
that's what she was having sex for with other kids to get cigarettes and food and drugs. But basically from a young age she already had the short end of the stick. Even if she didn't do that to herself, her grandfather was already assaulting her the entire time.
I think really it's another case of the system not being great.
Yeah.
Because she just wasn't able to get the help that she needed, and she's definitely a product of her environment.
Yeah.
Right. Her mom was bad. Her dad was obviously awful.
Mm-hmm.
Her grandparents were awful. The only thing that she really had was her brothers, which it's rumored that she was having sex with one of them, and
yeah,
it's one of those stories you hear where you're fuck, there really are people who just are put into situations and they just don't know any better. I mean, how
do you know any better?
When you're that young and you get into life, you just think that's what life is.
Yeah, and especially if you're getting assaulted by your grandpa, it's like, well, sex with another person doesn't matter.
Yeah.
There's no connotations to it. It's just like, I'm doing this to survive.
We saw that in our book club that Holly and I are a part of, Read Between the Lines, with the Virgin Suicides, where one of the daughters was just having sex to try and, because she just did it because she just thought it was bad, and then it was like, well, she already did it once. What's the point of not doing it a multitude of times? Yeah, it wasn't the same way that typically people look at it.
Yeah,
it was just like, it was almost a commodity. It seems like in her eyes, like it was an asset to get things that she needed.
Yeah, it was basically what she was able to do to survive. But basically, once she kind of got kicked out by her grandfather, she just kind of then started hitchhiking around the country, supporting herself through sex work and doing other odd jobs here and there just to make ends meet. And then May 1974, she was arrested in Colorado for driving under the influence and got disorderly conduct and firing a .22 caliber pistol from a moving vehicle. And then she was later charged with failing to appear in Skip Town before her trial started.
Yeah.
So she was also I think of her as the wild card of a lot of things. I think she also got to the point, you could kind of tell she also just didn't give a fuck. She just was like,
no,
I'm here, I'm living, this is what's happening.
Yeah, her adult life is one of the ones, and I think she's fascinating because she does not, kind of like how Richard Ramirez doesn't fit any mold that we can think of compared to a lot of the other ones. She doesn't fit the mold. She's more of a Richard Ramirez wild card, where it seems like she was influenced by her surroundings versus this other, who knows, potentially just being a bad human vibe, where I really think that if Aileen Wuornos was born in a different area, I don't think she would have been bad.
No,
I think it's 100% just dependent on she was getting abused sexually by her grandfather and didn't have outlets to get help.
No, and she was selling herself to other people at her school. There was no teachers stopping this. There was no help. There was no one to take care of her. And because she was given to her grandparents, obviously it made it so it was easy for her to not get into the system and potentially had a better outcome than what she got anyways. And so I think, because the same with Richard Ramirez, if he didn't have that crazy cousin that basically showed him all that he became, it would have been very
who knows
different,
where he would have been.
Yeah, that's my opinion as well. But
so her adult life is one that's just not easily tracked. For those of you who like our longer episodes, I don't think this is going to be one, because the only information we have is what she talked about in her trial, which we'll get to in a bit, and then just kind of her criminal record, because she has a very long rap sheet.
A massive rap, record. That's why I think it's so wild that during this time it was so kind of easy to get away with a bunch of shit.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, it's all you had to do is just not really be in that state or that county or that district.
Yeah.
And you probably will get away with it.
Yeah. Well, the thing with her though, she did spend several times in jail throughout her early adulthood, and you kind of covered when she was 18, she got arrested for DUI, disorderly conduct, shooting a gun.
Yeah.
And she got charged with failure to appear. Well, it gets more interesting. So 2 years later, in 1976, she ended up hitchhiking to Florida, where she met an older gentleman who was a yacht club president, and they got married very quickly. Yeah. So I imagine it was one of those things, old. I think the guy was 69 or 70, and I'm sure it was one of those things, this 20-year-old girl shows up, is...
Yeah. Well, also someone that's pretty cute, because if you look at the picture, not this one, no, the one closest to Wes over there, she's not unattractive by any means.
No, and I'm sure she was...
Especially when she was, before, drugs really got to her.
Yeah. And think 70-year-old man who probably hasn't, slept with anyone for a while, and this 20-year-old bombshell comes hanging out,
and she's like interested, like she doesn't care if she has sex with him.
Yeah, you know, sex in her mind is a little bit different. It got her to where she wants. They got married, but she went to jail briefly on an assault charge and actually attacked her husband with his own cane, which I think is interesting, and that led him to getting a restraining order. And this was all within, I think, 6 months. So after she was in jail for a moment, she returned to Michigan in that same year, and then was arrested for disturbing the peace and throwing a cue ball at a bartender's head.
Yeah.
And this was on July 14th of 76. And July of 76 was a wild month for her. So she's married right now.
Yes.
She has been to jail.
Yeah.
She has gone from Florida to Michigan. Now she's in Michigan. And 3 days after the disturbing the peace charge, her brother passes away of cancer.
Oh, yeah.
And she received a $10,000 life insurance payout, which I did the math, is the equivalent to about $50,000 in 2021.
So she got a chunk of change considering she's never had money in her life.
Yes.
From besides her husband's.
Right. Now from July 14th to July 21st, her marriage was annulled. So only 9 weeks were they technically married.
Yeah. And
in August, she was given a fine for drunk driving.
Yep.
Which, you know, she's already... This is the crazy thing, okay?
Yeah.
She got a fine for drunk driving, and this is now her, you know, her sixth charge, but she doesn't have to do much jail time. She paid that fine with her insurance money, which was about $100 then, and it's like $400 or $500 now.
Yeah.
And then she went and blew all of her money on buying luxury things, including a car, a pretty nice car, but then she wrecked it. Shortly after. It
literally, think of getting $10,000 or like $50,000, blowing it in a few months, and then with that money you got a new car, and then crashing that brand new car.
Yeah. I really think that she's one of those examples of, she has probably, you know, we don't have to have the discussion of sex work today. We can talk about that later. I will say that I think that sex work should be legal, and I don't understand why it isn't. But we'll have that later. Discussion on a different date. But I believe that since during this time in the 70s and 80s, when you are a sex worker, you're also around a lot of other crime. Because that's just kind of the environment you typically put yourself in. It's not like today's day and age.
No, it's really hard to avoid it. Mostly because it's like...
Well, and I don't think she really has homes. I don't think she ever lived somewhere permanently. I feel like she was around a lot of other people who are trying to survive and doing things that society was deemed as not okay. Whether that be robbing, other criminal activities, drugs, selling drugs, trying to make money to survive. This is when, on May 20th of 81, so this is about 5 or 6 years later, when she got her next charge, which was armed robbery. She had stole 2 packs of cigs and about $40, and she was sentenced on May 4th of 82 and released on June 30th of 83. So pretty close to a year and some change.
Yeah.
But things didn't really stop. So in May of 84, she was arrested for attempting to forge checks. So like I'm saying, like, this is the reason why when we get to her trial and she claims innocence for the things she's doing, it's tough. It's so tough to believe her because it's like, yeah, but your criminal record has proven that you've done all these things already.
Yeah.
So how can
we really believe you?
Yeah.
Especially in the sense of like wild card.
Right.
Like she got out and she just kept going.
Yep.
Like she didn't spend any time in jail.
And this list goes on for a while. I'm not going to do everything. I'm just going to cover some specific things. But then on November 30th of 85, she was named a suspect in theft of a revolver and ammo. And this does come later into play because she gets arrested and then they find it.
Right.
They find the revolver and ammo, but I don't believe they were actually able to charge her on that. But she was charged with car theft, resisting arrest, and obstructing justice. So, and stuff like this goes on for a few more years until we get to the big points of why she's known in the true crime community.
Yes.
So going into 1989, Wuornos is living with her girlfriend, and she's supporting them with her prostitution work or her sex work.
Yeah.
And her girlfriend, I believe at the time, is also working in a bar. I
think so.
And, they're just trying to support being able to have a stable place to live and whatnot. However, starting in November of that year, November 30th to be specific, is when she starts murdering people.
Yes.
Wuornos' first kill was a convicted rapist, and I think that is important to put out there, because she claimed to have killed him in self-defense. And I think if we were to believe her in any of these, it would definitely be that one.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those things, right? When you're in that line of work, I could only imagine how often that happens. Yeah. How often women or men who are in that line of work get put in those situations where people try and do harm.
Yes.
And I think that with someone who was a convicted rapist at that time, and her claiming that I believe the claims were that the guy sodomized her and continued to try and do more things, and then she shot him. And if that was everything, you'd be like, okay, like for sure, you were trying to self-defense. The problem is this wasn't her only victim.
Yeah.
There was a total of 7, I believe. It's 7 or 9. I believe it's 7. And a lot of it was the same type of situation where she claims that it was in self-defense. But the problem is instead of calling the police saying this is what happened, she would usually rob them, leave the body stripped somewhere, and then steal the cars and all of the stuff with it. And that's the biggest problem with trying to, because I know that some people like to debate back and forth whether or not, it was self-defense or not. I lean towards maybe the first one, and if she did do it in self-defense, but still took the car and all the stuff, maybe in her criminal mind she thought, well, maybe this is a way I can do this. Because there was another charge where she tried to armed robbery for a couple $100 from some guy. So I think what happened is she would go, this is my personal opinion, feel free to disagree, but I think that she would go and pick up Johns, which is a term used for guys who are going to find sex workers, and then either telling them, like pulling a gun on them and saying, hey, give me money, and if they refuse or try to fight back, she would blast them. And I mean, there was even one where he was shot 6 times in the chest and 2 times in the head. And you can watch a lot of her film where she says that she isn't a serial killer. She's like, I didn't do awful things to him. I shot them all. She's like, I could have mutilated the bodies. I could have chopped their dicks off and put it in their mouths. She's like, I'm not a serial killer.
Yeah.
But when you listen to her talk, you're like...
But the thing is, a serial killer is someone who consistently keeps on killing, especially if you have a same way. I think it's hard because I think part of me is like, I think the first time was an accident and then it just became an easy out.
Yeah.
It kind of was like a good, like, oh, this is easier.
It's really tough. It's a really tough one to talk about too, because we don't know. And if you go listen... That's the thing, right?
You have to watch her interviews to kind of understand.
If you watch her interviews, she seems crazy. For sure. Yeah. And, like, you can tell that the work and the drugs and all of her life has really worn at her. She doesn't look great. She looks beaten down. And it's... The thing is, though, is I don't know if she was telling the truth or if she wasn't. She did not hold punches in her court hearings.
No.
She told, like, one of the, I believe it was the attorney going against her, that she hopes that the guy's kids get raped, and that the judge was putting a victim in prison, a rape victim in prison, or sends him to death. The flip side of it is she wanted her defense attorney to give her the chair. That was her goal. Yeah. Because she just felt like, because her girlfriend basically outed her and said, and fought against her, I imagine, to not get charged. She told everything.
Yeah, because she probably was...
She was involved.
She was involved. Mostly because, like, is it Tyra Moore is her name? Yeah. They basically, like, Eileen's, or Lean's, biographer? Yes. Biographer basically said that when those two met, it was basically, like, the strongest connection, and it was something, like, a quote was, from then on, they became inseparable, and that was the anchor that Aileen has been looking for. Yeah. So I think the thing is, because it sounded like they've met and they were inseparable ever since, and like it was like the first person like Aileen was able to open up with and like tell her story and like things like that. So I bet it was super hard to then. Yeah.
There's lots of interviews with her building up to it, and the thing is like it seemed like a lot of the guards and stuff that were taking care of her really liked her. Mm-hmm. She seemed like she seemed
like outside of what she did, killing people, she seemed like the life of the party. Everyone liked her.
It's a very fascinating one because it's just, I don't know, it's just one that we haven't had to cover before, and it's shrouded a little bit in this weird self-defense thing where I'm still debating in my head where I fall. Yeah. I think, if anything, the first one was potentially self-defense. Yeah. And then she saw the value in it, and this just became a trend.
Yeah, because the thing is that my only like thing that's like makes it hard for me to like think of anything other than it was cold-blooded murder after the first one was, if it happened once, how does it happen 6 consecutive times in a small period of time? It doesn't make sense. It's like I can understand one instance, because the thing is like with other sex workers, I know that happens where you bring in a client, they think they have this control or they think they have this power that because they're paying you they can do whatever they want with you, which is not the case. Sex workers are people. I don't know how many times people have to say that. Yeah. It's just like anyone of a different color than white is a person equally as valuable as a white person. It's the same thing as a sex worker is equally as valuable as even like a construction worker, a mayor, a president. Absolutely. Sex work is work. It's a work. It's your job. And so like, but I do know that a lot of people have that belief that like, oh, I pay for it, I get what I want. Sure. You don't have a say. But it's like, no, that's not the case. So I definitely can see the first one being that instance of something like that happening. But the thing is, for it to happen 6 times pretty close together, it just doesn't add up. Because, like, how does 6 consecutive times, like, that same instance happens? Maybe I don't know enough about sex work. Maybe I would need to talk to somebody about it. But the thing is, it's like, I just don't see that happening. Yeah. That's my only thing is, like, if it happened once and she never did it again, 1, we wouldn't really be talking about it right now, realistically. But 2, it's just,
it's tough. It's a tough one to buy fully into because I just think that she gained so much value, and it just seemed like it was like a robbery. It seemed like maybe she was just robbing the Johns, and the ones who fought back got shot.
I guess it's fair.
That's kind of what I think, and
that's a good point.
I truly think that whatever happened, once the court started, once she knew that she was going to be, there was no way of her getting a short sentence because like she wasn't new to the prison system. No. I think once her girlfriend outed her, I think that just killed her. I think that she just didn't want to be. She just was done. She was done.
That was her anchor in the world, and it was gone.
And that betrayal is. I'm sure was very difficult, regardless of what happened. Like, the love of her life was like, no, fuck you. Yeah. I mean, and she talks about it. You can go watch her interview. She says, like, yeah, I'm over it. I'm done. There is a weird couple pieces of things in this. Her defense attorney is sus as fuck.
Yeah.
And
weird man.
He's a weird one.
He's an interesting man.
And I don't know what's going on with that. And the other thing is a lady by the name of, I have it here in my notes. It was similar to hers. It was actually Aileen Wuornos. So she adopted Aileen.
Okay.
The lady who we've been talking about. And it was in this weird, it's part of one of the 60-minute docs that they did on her.
Yeah.
It was like a strange, so this Aileen, well, I'll just call her Proley lady, was super religious, and she had adopted a bunch of animals and kind of had this like, almost like this strange sanctuary.
Yeah.
But she wanted to adopt Wuornos to kind of like say, hey, we're going to help you through God to get to where you need to be because no one's there for you.
Okay.
And I just thought that was a really weird, like, added thing. I don't know if that happens a lot. Like, maybe someone, like, tries to get in contact with people who are in the prison system and it's like, God's going to be there for you type of situation.
Oh, 100%, because that's, like, the easiest way to convert somebody is someone at their lowest point, kind of, technically.
Yeah.
Because, like, I mean, because it's, like, the same as like, oh, let's nurse this lady who's been misled from God is the same as like, I can fix Charlie Manson, I'll marry him.
Yeah.
It's the same concept of like, oh, Ted Bundy's not that bad, I can change him. Marries Ted Bundy's and have his daughter. You know, like I think it kind of goes back to like the savior complex that people have. Like they're like, I can fix this person or I can save this person.
Yeah. Because it was the weird thing too is this lady tried to convince Wuornos to not do the death penalty.
Yeah.
Because that's obviously what she wanted. She wanted to be done. She wanted to get executed. That's what she told her defense attorney. She's like, but this Proley lady wanted her to take the life sentence.
Yeah.
Which I find interesting.
Yeah, because it's like, nevertheless, she's going to be there for the rest of her life. And how old was she when she got convicted? Like, that's a hard one. I think it was in the early 90s, so she would be in her 40s or 50s. Yeah, so I mean, like, she wouldn't have probably lived that much longer, but, like, she just didn't want to do that. Like, she didn't want to, like, live the rest of her life in jail. I don't know, it's just one of those cases that left me with, I mean, it's tough to read, and it's tough to go through, because it's like, you hear stories like this of, like, an upbringing, and you're like, fuck, we continue to fail. The system failed her. Yeah, we just continue to hear more stories of the system failing, and we all know the system's not perfect, but fuck. Yeah, because the thing is, it's like it's really hard to. Because the thing is, that's sad. Is like this is probably happening today. Yeah. Like someone's probably living this exact same thing, but there's just no way. There's enough resources. Well, there could be enough resources. That's a different political conversation we can have, but. There's just not enough resources to be able to help all of these people. Yeah. Especially people in these bad situations. Yeah, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. So it's like... I definitely didn't have fun researching this one. Granted, I don't always have fun because, like, you know, you're researching shit that's, like, really dark and gloomy and gross and disturbing. Yeah. This is one of those ones where I just was like, fuck. Like, I think of this one... I think this one was harder because it really brought me back to Mary Bell. But like the thing is with Mary Bell's story was the sappy part of me says like it's a happy ending. Yeah. Mary Bell. The system worked for her. The system worked for her, which is like. I think there's just, and maybe I'm wrong in this, but I think there's a point of too late. If you don't help someone at a certain age, it's just too late. It is too late. And the thing is, Mary Bell got help right. She was very young. 12. She was basically, because she was convicted when because she did the first one when she was 11, and then she got convicted and sent to, like, basically a boarding school for delinquent girls at 12. Yeah. And then wasn't actually legally allowed to be an adult at 18. She had to still be there for, like, what, 3, 4, 5 years? Yeah. In that one system, and only had one fuck up, and mostly that's
Wasn't it just her like trying to like?
She just was having. She just went out. She just went out with some friends. That's literally all it was. And then but she dealt with the punishment, and then.
I feel like Mary Bell is such a one-off thing because I don't think that. I know some people call her the 11-year-old serial killer. I don't think that's fair. She did kill 2 people, 2 kids. Yeah. But like.
But I think it's like a tabloid thing. Yeah. It's definitely a tabloid thing because also too, once she's 11 and she killed people. Yeah, so it's like oh, she's 11.
It was old school clickbait.
It was old school. And
now it's still clickbait because it's like it's an 11-year-old serial killer.
I mean, we got clickbaited because we listened to it, and then I was like, she killed 2 people.
I use clickbait on that every time I post it. Yeah. She's 11-year-old serial killer.
Yeah, well, because that's what she's known by too, and also it's just like it's. Clickbait back in the day is very interesting because like news article clickbait. Yeah. Because I think of like the tabloid magazine, the front page, and like the tabloid magazines now. That's like, but Obama's a blizzard man. Yeah. You know, like that. Like they're like Obama keeps hordes of kittens in his basement. What is he doing?
Biden's an alien from which universe, galaxy, nebula? Oh my God!
Hillary Clinton. She has 2 sets of skin. You know, like just those ones you see. I don't know why they like still produce them, and like I can still.
Lizards in the office.
Right, and it's like it's so funny because it's like they're just casually at the grocery store. Yeah. And it's like
you look over and there's just something just blaring, and it's just like, what?
Queen Elizabeth has been bathing in the children's blood. That's why she's still alive. You know, like just that weird like. Well, now I'm interested in what you gotta say, but I'm not gonna. I'm buying it. You know, like I'm gonna read this front page, but I'm not gonna read this article because I'm like, this is silly. I love it though. Very silly. But yeah, so I feel like with Lean, it really brings me back to Mary Bell. But I think also too, her story was honestly like if she didn't maybe get like adopted by her grandparents. And like,
all right, let's get drunk. What's up, Lampy Lamp?
Hello. But if maybe she like, excuse me, she didn't get like adopted by her grandparents and like maybe was put in the system, it'd been a whole different story. But then again,
that's one of those ones where if we talked about this on one of our episodes where it's gonna like, there's ever a point in time where we can go back in time and like move stuff around to see what happens. I feel like Wuornos is just one of those 100% product of her environment.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that was just such a hard one to like research and stuff because I know we did it because like Women's History Month, but I'm like, ooh.
There's not a lot of information on her, and I think it's just because in a lot of people's eyes it is a cold cut case. Yeah, and then some of the true crime community does debate on the self-defense.
It's an interesting thing to think of. I really think the first time, I think of it more in the sense of like the first time she did it, it was self-defense, and then it was a good out. Yeah. Because she realized kind of how easy it was to get away with it.
Yeah. Until it wasn't.
Until it wasn't, obviously. Yes, but I think genuinely like the first time was. Like she didn't mean to kill the guy, but it just that was the only way she could get out of the situation. And then, obviously, after that, it just became really easy to rob them instead of actually prostitute yourself. And then, killing was just a simple answer. Yeah.
Well, I think that's all I have for her, and I'm sure the debate will continue on with what people think about her and her crimes. So let's talk a little bit about next week.
Next week we have the psychology episode, which is I'm very excited about.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So we're going to be covering a little bit of the psych of serial killers, our opinions on it. We're going to be reading.
I'm looking it up right now. I think it's the
serial killer test or
the psychopath test.
Yeah, the psychopath test. We're going to be reading that and discussing that, and then also we're going to try and find some online tests.
To see where our level of psychotic
see where we fit in on everything. Yeah. And then the week after, to conclude our March Madness weekly episodes, we're going to cover a cult, which we're still discussing where we're going to fall.
On which cult we want to pick. I love doing cults because we'll probably end up doing them all, but what do we want to pick for March Madness is
It'll be a good close to the month. We'll have a week gap between what we can do next. We really want to close hard with a nice old cult.
A nice cult, because I feel like those are always our best episodes, cults.
Yes, cults are one of the one of the classics for sure.
Oh, what's up, Kaylee?
Hey, what up?
Hello.
Thank you for the follow, Dirty Forest. My girl, yeah, she's super nuts.
She's wild.
For sure.
I think of her.
Off a rocker.
Yeah, I think of her and Ramirez the same. Just fucking wild cards. Because the thing is, it's like Ramirez was more of a wild card because he had no system, rhyme, or reason. Yeah. Aileen was a little bit more like cut and dry. Like that was her.
She was doing it for a reason.
She had a flow and she had like a system of how she did it. Kind of like the same with like a lot of other more serial killers. But I still think of her as a wild card because like I mean she got arrested at 18 for shooting a gun in the air out of a moving vehicle.
She seems like she like she. I don't know how to word this properly. She seems like someone that, like, if you were around her, is probably aggressively outgoing. Yeah. And that can be seen as good or bad.
See, the thing is, it's like
don't get on her bad side because she'll throw a fucking cue ball at you.
Yeah, she'll fuck you up. Yeah. But the thing is, it's like, out of every serial killer we talked about, I'd like to party with her the most.
I feel like she'd be the one at the bars that you never hear about that's like arm wrestling bikers and like fucking, beating up just whoever talks shit. Yeah, she just seems like that type.
She would be the one that's like if you were her friend, I feel like she would definitely give you that like protection. Like she would protect you because you don't talk about my friends like that.
You done jail time? Yeah, what of it? Like I just feel like she'd be like kind of like that. Old school like bad bitch attitude. It just sucks that it led to harm, like murder.
Yeah, it led to multiple men being murdered. But I think about all the serial killers because I also think back to American Horror Story, that season 5 hotel episode where Halloween all the serial killers come. And she's just there, and she's just like the wild. Like you could just see that she's just like antsy. She's like, I hate men. I'm only here for women, but I'll fucking arm. I feel like she probably did like try to fight one of the guys. Like it's like her character played, and it was just like how I kind of would perceive her in real life, just being like kind of the life of the party, but also the one that just fucks shit up.
Yeah, well, and she is quoted in an interview saying that she didn't hate men, but she hated police officers.
Oh, that's what it was.
Which is fascinating because one of her victims was a former
police officer.
Yeah, detective or police officer or something like that. That's another fishy thing that I didn't throw in here because it's a whole other conspiracy rabbit.
No, because that's what it was. Is in the scene, she doesn't hate men. It was one of the guys who was there, like who saw this serial killer sitting together, was a detective, and she's like, I hate cops. Yeah. She's like, I liked you until I knew you're a cop. Right. She exudes bad bitch energy in the worst way possible. That's the thing. Is like I would be terrified of her. If I was at a bar and she came up to me, I would be so intimidated and scared. But the thing is, it's like if I knew we were homies. Yeah, you bet. I would be like, fuck, okay. Yeah. I would definitely be having to run out of bars and away from cops alive. She just gives me that vibe of like, I feel like I might go to jail tonight. And I didn't even do anything. I didn't do anything this time. No, please. Please, sir.
But yeah, so that's our plan for the next coming weeks. I hope you guys are enjoying March Madness like we did. Make sure, our Dory Olds episode will be dropped tomorrow or Monday on all
platforms.
All platforms. That is going to be hopefully big on our end. And then this episode should be dropped next week. And then we have
the psychology episode.
The psychology episode, and then a cult to round up the month.
Yep. I'm very excited.
Yep. And just remember, we're at truecrimedrunks.com. If you want to be a part of the show in some sort of way, or want to communicate with us on an easier level, truecrimedrunks@gmail.com. Yep. And then social media is True Crime Drunks everywhere, except Twitter's silly. Yeah. They messed up the name, and it's @DrunksTrue instead of True Crime Drunks. I don't know how that happened.
Oh, that's weird.
But if you search True Crime Drunks, we're there.
It comes up. I got my Instagram, Books, Coffee, Bees. I need to start posting on it. I'll get there eventually.
Yep, and then Top Chauffeurs, if you guys know, that's all the other stuff that I do. So yes. All right, guys, thank you very much for the episode. Lampy Lamp, Kaylee, Forrest, if you're hanging out, Bieber. Everyone else who listens on the back end, love you guys. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, see you next week.
Boy.